right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing podcast, or today, the Frenemy, or Friends Really Enjoying Never-Ending Major Yelling. As today's episode of 177 is going to be going into Andor. Before we dive into it, though, let's go ahead, do a round robin, and see what everyone has been up to.
I'll
Okay,
jump in.
go for it.
Uh, I so if I look a little bit disheveled tonight, it's because I am with the heat wave that we had last of this weekend, which it certainly has not been just in my part of the country, but quite hot here. But what I would like to talk about is 2 nights ago we I made my family watch Transformers the movie, the 1980s cartoon version, naturally.
Classic.
Oh, good.
In kind of response to the upcoming top secret project we have going on, I was listening to the soundtrack from the movie, and I told my wife, "We're watching this movie tonight." And it went about as well as I expected to. The kids were not terribly interested. They were talking through most of it and making jokes and stuff. And I was just sitting there trying to enjoy it. But what I did do afterwards is I took a clip from the movie and edited it down to under 60 seconds so I could post it on TikTok without getting muted. And what happened after that has been nothing short of amazing. It currently sits at, well, as we're recording, it probably will go past 37,000 views.
Wow. Holy shit.
1,900 likes, 139 comments, 257 favorites, 212 shares. And it legitimately is just a bunch of 40 to 50-year-old men just hugging each other and crying over their favorite movie of all time.
That's an important market.
Yes.
Actually, yeah.
So the comments, I still cry at the scene almost 40 years later. Oh, the scene, by the way, is where Hot Rod becomes Rodimus Prime, which is the best scene of the movie. Another comment here. Oh my God, I'm 52-year-old man, and I still say to this day, when Optimus Prime died, I was crying like a baby at the age of 15.
Spoiler.
This still gives me chills. And this is one of my favorites. This was the best part of my childhood life. Thank you for posting.
Oh.
So it has been really awesome just to kind of like interact with all these other people who like appreciate this movie as much as I do, because my kids kind of were just like, whatever. But it has been really cool. And like it doesn't seem to be slowing down. I was watching like the views per hour like continuously go up until the United States goes to sleep, and then it dramatically drops, and then it rises back up in the morning. So it's been a cool ride. I honestly think after this one cools down, I probably will post another clip from the movie just for funsies. So might as well keep it rolling. There's people out there that want to see this stuff. So
nice.
So that's what I got going.
Brett has found the one way to beat Donald Trump. Transformer clips from the old cartoon.
No kings, all Optimus.
Yeah.
There you go. That'd be fun. That'd be a fun sign to put up in your protest. I can go next.
Sure.
I have, like I said, I had a lot, but I'll just do a couple quick ones here since this is the first podcast since I've been back from my East Coast vacation. Just had a lot of fun out there in New York and Boston. We were out there for really 9 days, I would say. And then flew home the 10th day, but wouldn't do too much out there. But it was fun, though. We watched 3 Red Sox games, 1 in New York, 2 in Boston, 1 against New York, and 1 against Tampa Bay. We sat on the green monster seats up in the corner, which was awesome. And even better yet, the Red Sox won 2 close games that we watched in Boston, so that was awesome. And beyond that, I will do a super quick movie review for you guys today. That's right. I watched yet another one off my top 10 most anticipated for the year. My number 10 movie for 2025, Presence, with the supernatural haunted house genre flipped on its head from the point of view of the ghost. And it's terrible.
Oh.
5 out of 10.
Oh, no.
Not appealing in any way. No good characters. Don't really get it.
Then why is it not lower than a 5? Because 5 to me says entirely average.
It was entirely average. That being said,
it's terrible.
Yes, but This is not a Dave system. It's not like a
Oh, okay.
1.2
Oh,
automatically. Like
Okay.
like I'm saying it's terrible, but that's a failing grade at 50%, but that's still better than 50% of the movies out there, but it was
Oof.
bad
hmm.
Mm.
or
Oof.
average at least, I guess we
Yeah,
could
I
say.
was really
So,
excited about that one, and now I'm bummed out.
Well, thank you for
well,
taking that bullet for us. We
Yep.
yeah, I
appreciate it.
did.
Yes. Yes.
My kids watched it with me, so they also did that. But that's I'll just do those for this episode. How about you, Justin? What have you been up to?
Also dealing with the stupid heat wave. I did not move this far north for temperatures in the 90s. Yeah, most recently I just got back a few hours ago from a tabletop RPG session over at a friend's house who did not have air conditioning. I mean, I don't either, but I also didn't have six people crammed into my living room. And we stopped like an hour and a half early because it was at least as hot in there as it was outside. And I could not form coherent thoughts by the end of it. Beyond that, I've been trying to work through the cavalcade of most anticipated games that have come out recently this year, and all of them so far have been pretty damn good. Just started Blueprints, which wasn't one of my most anticipated, but I know Dave really talked it up, and I think it might have been on someone else's list. It's interesting so far. I've been through most of Clear Obscure, Expedition 33, and that I'm pretty sure is going to be my game of the year, but we'll see. Let's see. Look Outside, which I mentioned a few episodes back. Also very solid, great pixel art survival horror, cosmic horror actually. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of stuff, but probably most prominently, I've been just immersed in a little free program called Fantasia Archive, which it's pretty much an offline version of a software that lets you make your own wikis. So I've started using this to try and keep track of stuff in my Pathfinder game, which I finally started running again after way too long. And this isn't sponsored in any way, but if anyone's listening and would like to pay us to sponsor them, this is an idea of what you might have in store for endorsements. Fantasia Archive is just it's wonderful. You can start at literally any spot. You can start with a character. You can start with a town. You can start with a country. And as you start typing in details of whatever it is you choose, it organically gives you prompts as to things to fill in next. Like say you start with a character, they're from this place, yeah. So that automatically generates an entry for that place, and their parents were such and such, and they moved to here. All of those generate empty pages, and once you're done with that character, it's like, oh, I can move on to these and start filling those out, and then it just kind of snowballs from there. It's a remarkably useful tool for just plotting out a world or a story or whatever you might want to use it for. It's free. There's no ads or anything. It's just you download it, you use it, and it's helpful. So yeah, I've really been fleshing out my world a lot lately, and it's felt good. But I feel like I've taken up enough time. So I
Feel
think
like feel like
go ahead.
Justin's going to finish his National Novel Writing Month in like one day this year.
No, I'm hearing a great endorsement, right? Wink, wink.
Yeah, yeah, and just think about what we at your friendly neighborhood Fondcast can do for you, potential investors. Uh, but yes,
Want your
do check
wiener harder? Wait.
out. I'll let you handle that one, Cody. But yeah, I think I've taken up enough time. I think it leaves us with Dan. What about you?
Indeed, I normally have a shorter update. This one's a little bit longer because my son actually graduated high school, and
Oh,
like
Nice.
within an hour after the graduation, we surprised him with a trip to Disneyland. So we
Oh,
spent a week out in California, 3 days at Disneyland, including the Avengers campus. So I got to hang out with Red Guardian, go on the Spider-Man ride, all which was absolutely incredible, and take my kids to In-N-Out Burger, which was a major life goal. So I feel like I'm doing all right as a parent. So that's the
nice.
major thing I've been up to. Otherwise, I also got to watch Predators: Killer of Killers on Hulu, the kind of animated Predator anthology series that is predators interacting with humans across. There's a Viking segment, a feudal Japan segment against a samurai and a ninja brothers, and then World War II fighter pilot. Uh, Fantastic, expanded on the Predators lore some more, and I really would love to see some more of this. And I'm hoping it's a really good taste of even more like the Badlands movie coming up.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yeah. All right. Well, with the catch-ups done, we can go ahead and get into the episode proper, which, as I said before, is about season 2 of Andor, the show, not the country. RIP for our Wheel of Time fans there.
Mm.
This is the prequel series to the 2016 movie Rogue One, exploring the Star Wars world and about a place a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away where an over-oppressive and cruel government is pushing down on its citizens to the breaking point in which they start finding small acts of rebellion. So obviously something that is completely unrelated to anything that's in modern day America. And we'll go ahead and start getting into it. The first thing I have on the agenda is talking about just the characters in general. So I can kind of list off some of the major ones here. You have Adria Arjona as Bix, Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, the titular character, Denise Gao as Dedra, one of the ISB Imperial Security Bureau agents, Elizabeth Dalu as Keela Marquis, who is the assistant to Luthen, Faye Marshall as Vale, Stellan Skarsgård, of course, as Luthen, Kyle Soler as Serial, and finally Guinevere O'Reilly as Mon Mothma, who the last one I'll mention was actually cast in that role of Mon Mothma in 2005 for Revenge of the Sith. She was in a series of mostly deleted scenes about kind of like the Senate at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And so she is literally playing this character 20 years on, which you go ahead and pull out your cane for the God I Feel Old segment of the podcast there. But going through kind of like the main list of characters, any initial thoughts, reactions on any of the overall performances?
I will say it's been ages since I've watched season 1. But I will say by the end of season 2, Cyril had really grown on me a lot more than I expected him to. He actually started to develop, his own goals, his own, things he was working towards, and a backbone. So I was a little sad with the way things played out, but it was good to see him grow as a character. So was not expecting that.
Yeah, no, I'm planning on going back and doing a rewatch of season 1, and he's one of the characters I can't wait to see like how vastly different he was because like you said, I remember his arc and how far he's come, but like
Mhm.
I'm sure it's going to be even more drastic when I go back and rewatch.
Yeah. And
Uh,
and that reaction does not surprise me from Cody.
I'll jump in here with a couple. I did enjoy, especially in the earlier episodes where she was a little more prominent. Mon Mothma was really kind of holding a lot of those earlier scenes down. I thought was doing a really good job of giving some some tension and like intrigue to what was going on. And I do think Diego Luna's Cassian did a really good job of just he's a character that feels like likable and still kind of like intense. And I thought that the Bix was really cool the season as just like that she's kind of like character has this like PTSD and you really feel that like she's really like kind of just hanging on through parts of this season. So there was a lot. I honestly I don't know that I could really say there was any performances that I did not like in this season. I felt like all of them were very solid, if not like really standing out.
I thought of one.
Oh,
Alan Tudyk as the robot.
That's fair.
I enjoyed him.
He did good.
But beyond that, I guess my next would maybe also be Cyril, just because he actually had a character change. Hashtag spoiler for the rest of this podcast.
Yeah, buckle up, everyone.
As a counterpoint to all the praise, I will say like the group of resistance fighters that in the first couple of episodes that Cassian runs into,
Mm-hmm.
I there were multiple times I very nearly stopped watching because they just seemed so. I mean, yes, they were disorganized, but they also seemed like they never would have gotten organized in the first place. Like they all hated each other. They all seemed like they were just, you know, completely in over their heads, had no idea what they were doing, and were just out to prove they were the biggest dog on the hill, or you know, to mix metaphors. It's just I really did not like them, and that was a pretty big hurdle for me to get over at the very beginning of this season. But you know, maybe things got better after that. We will see as we go on.
Yeah. Justin, you hit on like my one real criticism of this season was that storyline and those characters, the kind of the completely random, crazy band that he meets on Yavin. I've tried to like look into like what the hell they were even trying to like communicate with that, and from what I see, people are spinning it as like, well, those are like the really early forms of the rebellion starting to like form, where like no one knows the leadership and there's lots of disagreements, and like I can kind of see that, but the same, yeah, it was the one thing while I was watching, I was like, I need less of this, please end this. It was the closest I was to the fast forward button.
Mm-hmm. Like there's a scene where like they're really at each other's throats, and you know there's an actual fight breaking out, and then just from off camera this wild beast comes through and just in mid stride eats one of them, and I just busted out laughing because it was supposed to be probably shocking and you know like a break to the tension, but I just lost it because it's like that I could not have cared less about whoever that guy was.
Are we still on characters, or are we talking about the plot?
We kind of merged into plot a little bit.
Dan,
there.
did you have any other characters that you wanted to highlight?
I did. I want to give the Kila, Luthen's assistant, that actress Elizabeth Dalu, who I've seen kind of start to blow up a lot. She's been getting a lot of attention. The story I heard about her is that she was a relative unknown in season one, but as they filmed with her, they were so impressed. It's partially the reason why there's such a big flashback episode with so much of her in season two. So like that was the one performance that the actual writers were so impressed with. They're like, we're going to give even more screen time to this character.
As a kid and eliminate that actress for the whole episode. All right, sounds good, people. That's your reward.
All right. Well, speaking of the plot here, I have one other note that Senator Bail Organa was in this season played by Benjamin Bratt, which is a departure from Jimmy Smits, who's done it in obviously Rogue One and all the way back in Revenge of the Sith. He was recast due to scheduling conflicts, from what I was able to find out. So
that's lame.
Yeah.
I think they did a decent job matching him visually, at least.
Yeah.
They definitely could have done a lot worse. So yeah.
I honestly didn't know it was a different actor until very late in the season.
I have a hard time believing Jimmy Smits was that busy.
Hey man, Law and Order just keeps going, right? He's still on that, right?
Is he still on? I have no idea. Maybe.
I just assume.
Bum bum. All right.
All right. Law and Order
Law and Order?
Home Edition.
Retirement. Somebody ate the popcorn in the TV room. Bum bum.
Merchant, the next thing, Cody, like you were saying, let's talk about some of these story arcs in here, some of the plots. I summarize it into there's three kind of like major arcs within the season, with about 3 episodes each. So I was going to start kind of listing off some of the major events and see what you all thought and see if there's anything you wanted to talk about. So the first, in the aftermath of the Ferrix Rebellion from season 1, I'd say one of the major parts in arc 1 was Mon Mothma's daughter's wedding. The politics that were going on, how she was reacting, and of course the like I mentioned a little bit later in I've got a meme section that there was a popular 1-hour dance sequence that someone took her dancing and looped it for an hour solid.
That's not much of so Dan, I made a bonus game for you tonight called Now You Can, as I was taking notes through this season. So for that first little trilogy here, I'm just going to throw a couple at you. You ready for this?
Do it.
Have you ever wanted to see grown men play rock, paper, scissors in a galaxy far, far away? Now you can! Have you ever wanted to see Mon Mothma rave for 15 minutes? Barely an exaggeration. Now you can!
That one, the internet says yes.
Flashback to Matrix Revolutions on that one.
Have you ever wished that
everyone had the rape scene?
Your galaxy far, far away now included attempted rape scenes? Now you can!
Oh, all right. You already hit on one. Let's do it. Let's dive into that. what was the feeling on
Oh,
that?
he was trying to dive into that.
Oh, oh,
That's not.
where's
Come
where's the
on.
intimacy coach on this episode? What the hell?
I was surprised they went there and even used the R word because Disney, you know. Um, but yeah, it was definitely proof that they were willing to take this in directions that could be uncomfortable, for better or worse. Um, I mean, I it was noteworthy because it was there, and it does seem like something a skeezy middle management level imperial officer would try to do. I mean, who's going to stop him is kind of like the implication there, and it it's there. I think it was intended to be traumatic, and it got that across. Um, I felt dirty after watching it, but I think that was the point. So
Yeah, I think in terms of the character, it was like Brett said earlier, PTSD was already the state Bix was in, and now this was another layer on top of that, and something that, because of them kind of being like illegal immigrants on this planet and trying to hide their identity, not something that like they could have handled in any kind of way that proper channels. But in terms of like that as a subject matter coming up, it did take me out of watching it because I'm like, holy crap, did they just say that? Is this really like a topic we're breaching? But if you hold true that Andor is like Star Wars for adults, like then it kind of lines in there because it
yeah,
seems like you said very realistic.
yeah.
Justin, I know you said you were going into this season with a clean slate, open mind,
Mhm,
more or less. I want to get up front. That was my first comment I wrote in my notes this time was I am going to try to do the same thing with the
mhm.
open mind and go through it. That being said, I have on a vintage Star Wars Hawaiian Boba Fett shirt tonight,
Ooh,
and I'm drinking
all you need.
alcohol just to kind of see where we ended up at here. So,
I considered making myself a drink, but I don't have any ice ready. So, yeah, here we
did,
are.
did
Water
anybody
is good.
enjoy this first three episode arc? Like, this was probably the second worst three-episode arc I've ever seen in television after only the jail three-episode arc from the last season of Andor.
No, I agree. This was the first three were a slog to get through.
Were you tired of the fighting in the jungle between two inept bands of brigands? It's okay. We'll interject it with a wedding no one cares about.
The wedding did eventually lend some detail to Mon Mothma's situation and character, but I agree it was one hell of a slog to get through. The wedding took 3 days in world time. It felt like it took 3 days in real time too. So
I almost quit after this first three, I'll be honest, Dan. I was like, I'm going into this with an open mind, but these first three, like if I had just rated the show on that, spoiler, this would be like a 2.5.
well, this is why it took me so long to actually, sit down and watch this because I watched like the first episode. It's like, watched the second episode, fell asleep twice, I think, and I just kind of like set it aside for a couple of weeks because you were out of town, and it's like, well, if I don't have to subject myself to this, I'm not going to. And I commented when we were heading in to do this as a last minute idea for the episode we're doing right now that maybe binge watching this is the best slash only way to go about it, just to power through the stuff I'd seen already in hopes that it got better. And I think that is the only way that I was really able to approach this when all is said and done.
But don't forget too that I mean, they did this with Daredevil too, but they released them in 3 episode chunks. So that was week to week. You were getting here's these first 3 episodes, then these three. So that also I know because I sat down, I chained through each 3 episodes, and it did like I remember the overall arcs versus like what was happening in each individual episode. So like for me, it was enough. Cassian was stealing that TIE fighter. I didn't kind of enjoy his inept like flying of it. I understand it's advanced and it applies a
Crashed
different
it, yeah,
system, but
immediately.
like after the first couple of minutes, I'm like, you haven't figured it out a little bit more. Let's go. Um, yeah, out of the entire season, this was obviously the weakest part because it was so much set up. It was reminding of kind of characters and where they ended in season one, but also then set up for stuff that was going to pay off later in the series.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything really different from what you guys have said already. It did feel those first few felt very long. It felt like we were in scenes like they could have given us that information much quicker than they did, and it felt like things were just kind of like dragging out. And I don't know if it was because it's been so long since I watched season one, but um, a lot of the intrigue stuff to me kind of felt like it was going over my head. Like I was like, I don't know why this is important right now, but I'm going to hope that I get it later. And yeah, it just was this everything with Cassian in the jungle. What it felt like was like the episodes of The Mandalorian are kind of like their own little separate story, and then the next episode is like a completely different story. That's kind of what this felt like, but it wasn't good either. That's the problem. Was it was like I couldn't understand why I was watching all that play out. It's like it's not fitting into anything, and it's taking forever. So it felt out of place and weird. Uh, but yeah, I did. I mean, I watched through these, and I didn't really hate them, but I wasn't in love with them after these first few episodes.
Yeah. Yeah. The intrigue is obviously that there was a heavy theme in season one and it's throughout season two, but this is like it's trying to catch you up in the middle of a lot of things. Like one of the things I really interested to hear all of your takes on Mon Mothma's friend, who is Tay Coleman in the show, the kind of silver haired guy who at the kind of when the wedding was going, he got into the car with that other assistant, and the implication was that he was going to get killed. That was something that I looked back up and I kind of reread a little bit about season one to remind me like who he even was and what that was. So before I kind of like get into that, what did you guys think, or did you even notice it?
Again, for me, it had been so long since I'd watched season one. I got the gist of the relationship. I couldn't remember if he had played a major role in events leading up to this or what that role had been. Um, and I don't know. I'm going to be honest. For a lot of the wedding stuff, I was only half tuned in because it was all, well, now we have to go around in a circle, and you have to go to my side of the circle to accept my offering of betrothal or whatever. And a lot of it was just like, in a meta narrative standpoint, I thought to myself, is this ever going to be important for the rest of the show? And I figured the answer was no. So I was watching, but not fully invested in those. The main things I took away from the whole wedding idea was Mon Mothma herself was in a marriage that was essentially loveless, might have been political. I don't quite remember from season one. And she was worried her daughter was going to end up in the same position. And that was like the main tension that I got from that. That all the other stuff was just sort of, okay, Luthen is trying to get information from a few people, and there's this stuff going on in the background. But for a lot of it, I was just sort of only half tuned in, just to be honest.
Fair,
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah, it just seemed like it was a lot of political machinations. Like you could see she was under pressure from some factions and trying to woo, court from other factions, and had to be very careful about what she said, to whom she said it, and it was all of these things. So
Game of Thrones in space.
I was about to make that comparison. Yes. All right.
meanwhile, what's happening in the galaxy next door with the whales? We don't know. All right. Luckily, the show only went up from here. So
yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of going up, the next major arc was around the Gorman massacre. So we had a time jump between those three episodes and Gorman a year later, where first off, we've got Bix and Cassian are kind of stationed on Coruscant doing little things for Luthen. Bix gets a chance to sneak into the kind of torture agent who caused her PTSD and actually kill him with his own device, which is a very rewarding scene.
super cool shot. I wish they had spent like a couple seconds longer of that guy's agony, because it was just like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
she got her revenge, and then it would cut, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah, I could have savored that a little bit more.
Yeah. But then cool girls don't look at explosions. She hits the button and just in the background. Uh, but
See
yeah,
some of the other things. We've got Cyril's deep cover as he's starting to develop his relationship with Dedra, and kind of getting more involved in the Imperial sector, and then actually volunteering to start getting deep within the Gorman resistance.
yeah. That just felt like a really interesting character study of how someone can be so sure that their side is right, so set in their ways, and then become immersed in, basically in the opposition, in the other culture that they're pushing against, and realize that, well, maybe the way I've been looking at things isn't the way things actually are, or maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. And I just found that his whole story arc, like I said before, I found really, really interesting and rewarding.
Interesting you say that because I was going to ask what that red hat is behind you, but I wasn't sure. So
It's just a gnome getting ready to kill me.
okay,
Not the gnomes again. Yeah, especially for Cyril, who's like in season one, it was all about like buy the book. Even when his like commanding officers telling him like, no, don't do that. He's so super by the book, and now he's really crossed over, and he's starting to get into this really more obscure, like gray area world.
Yeah, I enjoyed his arc a fair bit. He definitely was like the first season, he's like the wettest of wet blankets. Like, he's just
Yeah.
this really limp noodle character. But yeah, just as you guys have said, like he actually develops into something that by the end of his fate that we'll get to here, he you actually start to like root for him a bit, which was massively surprising for me. I wasn't expecting that to happen. Uh, but
yeah.
one question I do have, and because I wasn't able to answer it. Now, are he was he and Dedra like actually married, or was that just a cover story? Because they like at times
I
they acted like they were like actually married, and then other times it just seemed like it was just a cover, like just all business.
I think it
Uh,
was a cover story that was developing into something more.
yeah, it almost felt like something a cover story that Serial wishes was real.
Hmm.
And I would the only point I'd say is that Serial's mother, like if she found out he was married and didn't like let her know, like she would have thrown an absolute shit fit. So I have
That's
to believe
true.
it was just a cover.
Though that whole sequence of them interacting with his mother and trying to keep up appearances, that
Oh
was
my
more
goodness.
entertaining than I thought it would be.
Or how about Dedra like reading the Mother of the Rights Act and all of a sudden
Yes.
changing the tune? Like that
Yeah,
was
right.
unexpected but very enjoyable.
Yes.
Bitch
Uh,
meet bigger bitch.
Yeah, professional bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right.
Hey Dan, I
Uh,
had a question for you in this mini arc here. Have you ever wanted to see Cassian cosplay as Bono? Now you can.
That was actually on my wishlist list.
Hello.
oh,
Yeah, his Cassian looks great in the rough, not cleaned up. Let's keep him out of that. I heard a joke. There's Diego Lunas has like really long hair, and they were saying, oh, he's doing that because he's going to play his lost sister in season three. So you have to be really careful about prettying that man up.
uh,
That's funny.
yeah.
Question: why
Hmm.
was Saw Gerrera in this season?
Uh, to show another element of the rebellion, the crazy, and honestly, to like give his character like more of a background in Rogue One. For example, you find out the reason he's got that rebreathers because he's addicted to like jet
No, that's
fuel.
true.
Yeah. So did he need to be there? Maybe
No.
not, but
Did his
I
plot
do.
serve a point?
Uh,
I was very
Uh
confused by that because they were like, "We got to get the coordinates on this thing correct, and we got to do this thing to drill," and then it didn't go anywhere. And I was like, wait a second.
That's true. I had forgotten about that.
yeah,
Did you put
and
this guy in here just because he's recognizable?"
that is
so,
kind of the feeling I got.
yeah, I that feels like a canon serving moment. So I mean, Saw Gerrera is all the way back to like the animated Rebels show. They show like a young Saw Gerrera,
Hmm.
and obviously filling in a lot to his performance in Rogue One, just in terms of like some of the other details he's getting. And I think he gave one of the more interesting speeches too. There was a couple speeches I want to highlight, but is like you're here, you're right here, you're not with Luthen speech. Like I think that was really kind of cool and empowering. And he made a line in that speech about like we're the fuel. And I think what he meant was like we're like the ones that are going to burn up in the rebellion. We're not going to see the end of this, but we need to propel this and move it forward.
Mhm.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that whole his whole thing wasn't without value, but it did feel like by the end it felt like, oh yeah, that also happened,
Yeah,
kind of a
it
thing.
was.
Yeah.
And there's a fair few moments that don't like get complete payoff at the end of the season, or even in Rogue One. So that's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he does provide like a different type of character, which is I think helpful to the story overall. And like you say, he's like borderline psychotic
He's
and
an extremist.
or fully psychotic. And it like he's always doing something where you're like, shut up. What are you doing? Stop what you're doing now. You're going to fuck this up.
Yep.
So yeah, not necessarily like a likable character for that from that perspective, but it breaks things up because I think there's a lot of other characters who are very just like uh intense and like kind of straightforward, and he does bring something else to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess he does also kind of embody the fact that if you are fighting against a tyrannical regime, that is far more powerful and bigger and just more well equipped than you are, you take what allies you can find, I guess. So I could see that aspect of things too.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
he
it's
also
episode. Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was gonna say he gave us one of the most memeable moments from the season too, which is that like you don't know where I am. Like, no,
Mm.
Saul, we know you're in Jeddah. Stop it.
um, what was what the this is I don't know if you got you got time jumps later on the schedule here.
Yeah, I would
All
just
right,
kind of but
all right.
reference them, bring them up.
Well, this one, I mean, there's a couple things here to finish up this second arc, but I had problems with the time jumps in this show only because like you have more so than other shows we've reviewed on here. You have like this cast of let's just say 12. I don't know the exact character count that we're following here, but and for the most part they really don't interact crossover too much, right? So when they do, it's like, oh, this is a scene where like Cyril's with Cassian or something. It kind of like stands out as like a moment. But the fact that they purposely did like the year between the arcs I had a hard time with because I was like, wait, so like they finished this little thing and then like what did they do for the next year? Until we like you could tell they clearly like spaced this to take up the time right up to that moment. So they were like a year for each arc or a year in between each arc. And I'm like the what was his name, Willen or something? Who was the guy
Oh
that
yeah.
joined it
Saws.
yeah, not by choice, saw his little band there, and then like the next time we see him in the very next episode, like he's back on planet with like Luthen's crew, and I'm like,
Yeah,
well,
with
how
no
did he get away
explanation.
from Saw? Like, was he there the whole time? How did he escape? Like, so it was just hard because there were like these gaps of information I did want to know, and then like it was just like magically place A to place B, and like they're in this new plot now, and I'm like, oh, okay, so.
Yeah, I
That's
I
fair.
understand that. I think though it kind of undoes one of the problems I have with Star Wars in general, which is that every Star Wars movie is like this is the most fucking intense 3 days you're ever going to believe. Like, because George Lucas explicitly said he didn't want any of his Star Wars movies to take place over more than a week. So every
Huh.
single thing had to be super compressed, and I think especially the jump between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith in terms of Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting a decade of Clone Wars, like and all that character development, and thankfully they fleshed it out with the TV series. But like that's an example where I think that being super rigid about this compressed timeline in your movies was like it suffered. Like, was this the best? No, but I'm glad it gave itself more room to breathe, and all these diverse storylines weren't happening in like a 3 day period.
I do feel like they did a fairly good job of making it look visually different after the jumps. Like I think especially after like between the second and third, um, I was like, oh yeah, these people look different. Like they don't. It's not like they're wearing all the same shit. And they all like like they
That's
look
true.
different facially, like or whether they had different hair or something. So it was like okay, it looks like they've been through things.
Plus, hey,
Yeah.
this gives us opportunities for like side stories too in between. Like this is Andor 2.5.
2.5. All right. So I made it to episode 6 after I said I was going to have a clean slate and a clear mind for this season, Dan. I made it to episode 6 before I wrote down, I'm not sure I actually care about any character in this show. That's hard to pull off. How is this
Ooh.
possible?
Not caring about any character?
This is the most bland cast of any show I've ever seen. Like, literally nobody changes except Cyril. And Dedra like cracks finally at the end. Everybody else is exactly who they were like the entire season. And I'm like, these characters are boring. I don't know. I don't
Mon
care about
Mothra
any of
throws
them.
Mon Mothra throws away her career, her family, and like any kind of ties to her family to dedicate
Mhm.
to the rebellion.
But she's
Yeah.
playing the same character, just in a different arena. She didn't change. Barely, I guess.
Her entire life upheaved.
She's in a different
There's
location that's not as fancy,
she cut
but
her hair.
she sure did. And boy, that was not a good decision. But anyway, no, I don't know. It's just I like Cassian's a whiny bitch through 2 seasons of this show who every episode is like, I'm done with this. And then he's like, all right, I'll help you. In the next section he's in. And like everybody else is like static the whole time, it seems like. I don't know.
Well,
I will
Cat,
agree, just to interject real quick, I will agree that Cassian, ironically, is probably the character I like the least, and it's his own show. Just because, yeah, he always did kind of have that, I'm going to do my things my own way, I'm done with this, except for just one more job kind of a thing. It just, I don't know, something about him is just abrasive, and I never really gelled with him to the point where years ago when they announced that this show was going to be a thing in the first place, I'm like, they picked him to focus on. I will say I don't think the other characters were quite as static as you are getting the as you're putting across. Like Bix had a chance to step away from it all with Cassian, because he was like, it was one of those I'm done with this moments, let's just go off and be together. And she dug in her heels and said, no, this is bigger than either of us. It was a moment of choice. It was a moment where she realized that her and Cassian's own happiness wasn't the most important thing in their lives in the galaxy. And I felt that was, especially after everything she'd been through, where she could have wanted just to finally say, I'm done and I can move on. The fact that she was mature enough to realize that this is more important, I think that was a really interesting bit of character development, just as one example. Um,
I and Cassian, while I do agree, has that like swarmy thing throughout. Like he's the dark goth version of Han Solo. He changes from season one being, yeah, all Cassian all the time. This is what I'm doing, and I'm using other people to get what I need. To at the end of this, he's like, okay, I'm actually going to contribute to something bigger than me. I'm going to be part of this rebellion, not for my own selfish reasons, not to somehow get revenge, or maybe they can get me out of this problem I'm in, but I'm going to help them. And that explains a little bit of where he's in Rogue One. Because if you watch like season one, Cassian, and then watch Rogue One at Cassian, you're like, wait, this isn't the same dude. Something's happened, and it's not
okay.
great, and he's not super happy, fluffy in the midst of this. It's all bad all the time, but it is a change in terms of what he's willing to do for others.
That's
I was
fair.
just thinking that probably part of the reason why you feel like you aren't seeing change in the characters is because of the time jumps. Like the times when the characters probably were changing is in those times when we don't see them, and we come back around and now they're like they've kind of reverted to where they were. Like specifically like Cassian at the end of the second arc when he gets the letter that Bix is gonna leave so that he can be what they could both be what they need to be for the rebellion. Like all that part after that would have been like a really good, to see the development of like what Cassian goes through. Like, but we don't see that. It's just a year goes by and he's, playing cards with his robot, and, and he's back fully in the rebellion. So, maybe that's part of why things feel static.
Could be. I partially feel just like when I watch a show, like there's got to be a character or two or three that I like attach onto as I'm like, oh, I like this character, or like their personality or how they present themselves, or like it's not the acting job because I do feel like these roles are competently acted for what the character was written as. I just don't find any of the characters interesting in this show, and I barely did in season one as well. But I don't know. Like I didn't
Well,
feel like I was rooting for anybody as I was watching this. I'm like, who am I cheering for? I guess the rebels because they're the rebel side. Yay. But
It
like,
Yeah, I mean it's a very like similar mood throughout the season. Both season 1 and season 2 are very similar, and within that own season it's kind of uniform. Like there's very little humor. I was
yes.
trying to think if there's any at all, really. I think the
From the
thing I laughed
droids.
at the very
yeah.
most was, yeah, the things with the droids are like, I mean, we could be coming up to it here soon, but everything with K2SO in the like last two episodes was amazing. Um, but yeah, there's not much or almost no humor. There's very little like happiness or even like kind of like tender moments, really.
Mhm.
Everything's just intense all the time. So it's tough to get a lot of feeling from characters when they're just doing the same thing constantly.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, Brett. I think that kind of feeds into like why I don't have big reactions to moments in the show too, because I'm like, oh, now they're like assassinating that group of people. Eh.
Well, so a lot of the same cast and working crew was the ones from Chernobyl. And I'd say Chernobyl's another show that very similarly, like, it was all dark all the time. It went from like bad shit to like dramatically worse. And it
Hmm.
like, yeah, that's another episode where like, who are you rooting for? The radiation? Like, so similarly, you don't feel super great after watching Chernobyl, but like you feel like, okay, I've seen this event. I understand like kind of like what happened, the sacrifice that needed to be made to kind of get things okay. But yeah, it's not a happy time.
Well,
All right. Well, we got one more arc to get through here.
two more, right? Or are you counting that whole thing as the four through nine?
That whole thing, 4 through 9.
Oh, I got more than. Hold on. Sorry, I didn't
Oh,
realize we were doing that
my
all at
mistake,
once.
please.
That's okay. Um, it's starting in seven. We were hints in six, but starting in seven, I did actually finally feel like something was happening in the show a little bit, which was good. So, we get the big speech from Mon Mothma here, and we get the Gorman, more or less the violence on the planet. But I did have a question for you, Dan,
Yes.
because I know you read a lot of behind the scenesy stuff with this.
Yeah.
So my question for you was, have you ever wanted the background of an episode to use the same chant for 20 minutes continuously? Now you can.
There's no, there's they're breaking new ground with this. They've never had some kind of like chant going on in the background in any other
Yeah,
shows.
that's all right, Dan. I had another question for you too. Have you ever had your prayer answered that your 20-minute chant on a TV show finally ends, only to be replaced by a new 20-minute singing scene of a 30-second song? Now you can.
It was a better song.
It
Do you
was a better
want
song.
to say the
It
chant
was less
even?
abrasive for my ears listening. I will say that because when they were just saying that chant over and over, I was like, I'm going to mute this episode right now because I can't take the volume of this repetitiveness in the background.
Well, how did
Well,
you all feel about the Star Wars French?
it was very clearly slightly tweaked French. It was like
Yeah,
Timu French.
yeah.
But I mean, if you're going to do an alien language, tweaking something that already exists for the ease of the actors, I guess there are worse ways to go about it. It was interesting, I guess. Um, Regarding the chant, though, I've marched in protests just more recently than I would have liked. A lot of what is shouted and chanted can get very repetitive. So for better or worse, that was kind of realistic. Um, but regarding like the French, I'm ambivalent about it. It was fine. I do kind of wish it was a little more distinct, but it's just like, all right, this is somehow space French.
Space
Sure,
French.
I'll roll with it.
especially with a planet involved with like high fashion and garments. Um,
Yes.
but it was obviously like they were taking like World War II French resistance and like giving it a character and a space in Star Wars. And I as soon as I latched onto that, then I gave him a pass on the pseudo space French.
I don't know that I minded or didn't mind it, but I will say like my ears perked up when I heard it. I was like, wait, what? What am I hearing right now? But it didn't really bother me one way or the other.
All right, and then obviously that did not end very well for the space French. As there was quite the massacre scene. I'll mention really quickly. This is something Cody, you mentioned the expanded stuff. This has been in the canon for 20 plus years, but there's never been any details about it in terms of the Gorman massacre.
Mhm.
But it is listed as like one of the steps on the way to the formation of the rebellion.
Okay.
But
I mean, honestly, the part on Gorman, I didn't mind as like a plot line. Like I almost kind of they'd had to reformat this season, but I almost kind of wish somehow those first three episodes had been like condensed or eliminated, or those
hmm,
characters had been like placed directly onto Gorman, because like that was actually kind of a more intriguing scene to see how that whole thing played out there on the planet. And I think maybe would have gave me a little more like gravitas as far as the plot to jump into season two as well, to be like, oh, right away we're in this new political thriller situation where we have real risks here on this planet.
yeah, and I appreciate it too. Like we're being introduced to these characters where like tensions are already high, and you don't know who's really part of the resistance, who's like a double agent. So it added a lot more like interesting intrigue immediately.
And holy crap, did this whole arc hits differently in current year
Yeah.
than it might have if this had aired, 5 years ago or whatever. Just given the climate of things, I think it made it hit harder than it might have otherwise.
Do you mean in two
Um,
BBY?
that's why I'm just going to start referring to like the years as we go on.
Cody,
Uh,
points for using the timeline in universe. That's well done.
Don't
yeah.
do that, Justin, because that indicates something bad's going to happen here quickly. We'll be referring to.
Isn't it? I mean,
Only three and a
All
half
right,
more years. We'll be fine.
diverting away. Stormtroopers, scary again. It took a little while, and considering they've been such cannon fodder, I actually see them like in their purpose of complete suppression of people.
Agreed, but
Uh-oh.
their armor.
I was just going to
Heavy
say
air
that.
quotes in armor. What is it even for?
I don't
Why do
know.
they wear it?
Like the smallest, tiniest little KB Toys looking blaster pistol hits them square in the plate of what is supposed to be armor. He falls down in his bed. What is it for?
It's pretty unimpressive, but thankfully
Yes.
the Empire has these K2 units that suddenly show up
Mm.
and extreme robot beating. Like it was frightening.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, don't even need weapons, just like they're just wading through the
Yeah.
crowd and
Yeah.
bodies are flying and oh.
And it added a whole lot more to the humor of K2 like later in the season and in the movie because you're like, this guy's a monster.
They should have really built more of those for episodes 4, 5, and 6. That would have been
Yeah,
really
really.
effective.
Yeah.
Look, it's Luke Skywalker.
Bang.
Dead.
It was. Now it's
End
a
of trilogy.
smudge on the wall.
All right, that was all I had for that arc.
Okay, good on that arc. All right, then let's go ahead and wrap up the last one, which is about what's happening on Coruscant and Yavin. A year later, we have another jump. And obviously, a big part of this arc is about Cassian and Bix, and spoilers, Bix leaving Cassian. I think we kind of referenced it earlier.
Mhm.
I also want to take a moment to talk about the interactions with the Force Healer, because I thought it was
Mhm.
fantastic. They brought in a character who like uses the Force, but is not distinctly a Jedi.
Mhm.
I always appreciate that. I really appreciate that in Rogue One, where you have these kind of like Force aware, it adding that in, and then also giving Bix and Cassian that kind of like extra element of like the universe says you have a destiny, Cassian, of some kind. So that extra push and nudge, and I think that probably affected Bix immensely in her decision. So kind of wanted to get everyone's reactions to that.
Needs more witches.
You shut your whore mouth.
Wow. Wow.
But no, I most of the series had really kind of skirted around any real even mention of the Force, aside from Bale at one point saying "May the Force be with you" as he left a scene. But otherwise, it was very much focused on normal people just stuck in horrible situations and trying their best to fight back. I'm glad they acknowledge that force sensitive people do exist who aren't like Jedi or witches or whatever, and that the force does flow through certain people more strongly than others. But I'm also glad it wasn't a focal point. So yeah, I appreciate the nod to the fact that this is science fantasy instead of just straight up science fiction. But by the same token, I'm glad it was just a nod and not really much more than that.
Yeah. Didn't bother me. It was fun. I mean, it was a short little scene, but it's kind of fun just to kind of round out the world again, the universe, to see if there's other elements out there, which I always like when you expand the mythology a little bit, even if it's an established mythology, but still just to have it out there.
So what you're saying is what quick aside, the horrible melons from the first story arc really, really helped flesh out the universe, huh?
Horrible melons? What were the
Remember
melons?
the resistance guys on the jungle planet? They were like, "What are we gonna eat?" And these smell horrible. They taste as bad as they smell. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
See,
Not every
Cody's okay
detail
with
is
the Force, not with the flora.
Yes.
That's the difference.
So Force, not the flora.
But you were going to say something, Brett. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just was gonna say I don't know if it just was I was watched that episode late at night or what, but I honestly didn't get the fact that she was like force sensitive. Even I just thought it was just like she just had like an ability to like have like premonitions about people more than anything. What was it stated directly? I'm really curious now.
I think it was more implied. Not the show usually seems like it has a bit more tact than just to say, "Oh my God, this thing is happening." So I think it was implied, but it is open to interpretation by that.
I can't
By the
remember.
same.
I feel like Bix said Force healer.
I think
Because
they used the
Cassian's
word
like,
healer for
Okay.
sure. Yeah, maybe.
yeah,
Healer,
healer
yeah.
for sure.
Hey, you
I'd have to
remember
go back and see it
how
again.
Cassian couldn't figure out how to fly that ship, even though he was a pilot, which would be like
Yeah.
tangentially associated with what he could normally do.
The brand new ship design.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's brand new.
but remember how Clea immediately knows how to use all the medical equipment in Luthen's chamber?
That's because she's a spine. She's had training.
Sure, she listens all to stuff for like what, 20 episodes, and suddenly she knows how to use all the medical stuff. That makes sense.
Well,
Sure.
you see how what she had to deal with growing up. I'm sure she
Yeah.
had to patch people up on
Yep.
multiple occasions.
And I would imagine sneaking into hospital to take out other spies who got captured by the Empire and are possibly going to give us. I would say this is probably not the first time she did it.
Extrapolation is large in this episode. Oh my
Plus,
gosh.
we all watch Grey's Anatomy. We could do some things.
I don't know, man.
Also, every piece of equipment in Star Wars has 3 switches and 2 buttons.
It's true.
So it's not hard to get the combination right. If you just
I was actually, even though she did the like stuff on the computer keyboard, I was more impressed with how she like went up to the big tube that was in his chest and was like,
Yeah, she got that done.
I was like, damn, how did she not? Okay. Oh man. Hey, Justin, question for you.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to be a resistance fighter who is suddenly killed by his mentor? Now you can!
Yes. I mean, yeah, there were a lot of sudden deaths in this show, or at least, betrayals, what have you. But I don't know. I mean, it shows that even in a nominally cohesive unit or like organization like a resistance, like a rebellion, not everyone's always on the same page. But yeah, I
That
see you
was
shaking your
terrible.
head.
Come on.
I mean, yes, it was disappointing, but
Luthen
yeah.
couldn't just be like, yeah, I have one of my 27 safe houses or one of my 30 ships I could send you to and get you out of here at this moment with your family. After he's like, I have a wife and kid, and then we see him dead on a bench. I'm like, come on,
I
Luthen.
I
God
think he was too
bless.
big of a risk. I mean, he knew
Oh,
things, and if he was caught by the people who were, according to him, right on his tail, it could have ruined everything because they would have known that the
Yeah, and then
rebellion
that
knew. And
Yeah, for Luthen, the guy who said who said to this dude, I'm working on a sunrise I'm never gonna see. That's Luthen's mindset. He already had that committed for that guy too.
yep.
didn't like it. Doesn't put the resistance in a good light in my eyes. Like, you're just as bad as the Empire. We used you up till your effectiveness was gone and then we killed you. Or we put you in prison cell. Or we threw you under the bus. Or whatever. I'm like, he had infinite resources this entire 2 seasons to be like, here's how I can help this guy. Nope.
But the net was tightening around him.
Yeah,
His
Luthen was trying to get off
resources,
What net? They're
yeah,
himself.
literally right next to each other talking on a bench. Like, take him someplace and get him out of there.
in that scene. But I mean, the
What more do we need than that scene? That's the moment they're in. Take him
well, yes,
someplace
but
and
it was a
save the
wide
guy.
up. It
He
was a
said
wide up. Go ahead.
he wasn't gonna leave without his family. He said that
Hmm.
distinctly. So now Luthen all of a sudden has to move at least like 4 or 5 other people in the
Yeah, good
system.
call. Let's just orphan that kid. Good call.
Well, it's not like kids get orphaned in wars, so.
Oh,
It's not like Luthen didn't he
adopt
adopted
an
Kayla
orphan.
too.
Yeah,
He adopted an orphan.
yeah.
He's already taken care
That
of his
doesn't
kid
make a
sister.
1 + 1 + 1 type
Yeah, come on,
situation here.
that's a parent math. He plus the dad and then he removed the dad. It all goes out to zero.
I think the more I watched this episode, the less I liked Luthen, which was very little to begin with.
He's
But
not a
anyway.
likable character.
Yeah.
He's
I know, but
awful.
at least he stood for like the prospect of a better life, and then he just made decisions through this one that I'm like, no, you don't. You're just a jerk like everybody else.
Well, I think it's there to underscore that there a lot of the times, especially in times of conflict, there aren't easy decisions that work out
Yeah.
for everybody. Sacrifices do sometimes need to be made, and it sucks. And the people who have to make them aren't necessarily good people. But
I'll tell you who you sound like right now,
yeah,
Mr. Red Hat behind you there. Because no, that's not true. You can
I
always
mean,
help somebody.
you
How
can
about
try, and you can have worse consequences down the line as a possibility. Trying to get that guy out might have ended up in all of them getting captured.
so here, let me remake a
Or
comparison.
the resistance may have heard about it and been like, fuck this, we're not going to go along with this cause anymore. If you're just going to kill us when you're done with our usefulness, forget that.
If this really is Star Wars version of Game of Thrones, no one's safe. No one's got the plot armor, and you're going to see some grisly deaths that like in regular Star Wars wouldn't have made sense, or like it wouldn't have been allowed. Like this is a great example of one that like in Skeleton Crew version, like yeah, that guy would have gotten off the planet with his
Yeah,
family, and everyone would have been happy. This is not that.
right.
Yeah, but Ned Stark wouldn't have just straight up killed one of his buddies on the way out to be like,
No, he
oh,
would have been a naive idiot who got his head chopped
Yeah,
off
not
because he
Ned,
believed in the
but
goodness of people.
everyone except for Ned. And considering Ned lost his head to a friend, I would have to
Yes,
say that's a bad comparison.
I couldn't
yes,
remember who killed him to be fair, but anyway.
It was his friend.
yes. Ugh.
Hey, speaking of not knowing the difference, can we talk about Clea versus Enza? Because they look too much alike. Cast a different actress, pick a different colored hair. I didn't know who I was watching half the time when those
Yeah.
two were together.
I, that's fair.
There was an internet conspiracy theory early on that Claire was supposed to be Leia. Like that maybe they would even like reveal like this actually was Leia under a different name. Obviously the
Interesting.
flashback episode completely removed that, but in terms of look, like like she looks the part. And
Yeah.
you would imagine this is a little bit of what Princess Leia would be doing is the espionage, the listening to messages,
Hmm.
passing clandestine stuff.
Hmm.
That doesn't help with the point. Yeah, they did look familiar, but
Mhm.
Just because they were on the same side, if they had been different sides, it would have been easier. But hey, at least if I was going to put a perimeter around a hospital I was trying to protect, I'd put a guy at the stairwell. But that's just me.
Well, it's still better than any of the strategic or tactical decisions. Oh God, what the fuck is his name? The blue guy from Ahsoka. Thrawn.
Thrawn.
Thrawn. Oh
Yeah, any of the
God.
decisions he made during that show. So an oversight versus just being completely inept at everything.
Yeah.
My point is, we've seen far worse in
Yeah.
terms of incompetence.
Fair enough.
Well, in terms of not so much incompetence, how about complete competence? Let's talk about K2SO's episodes.
Still, like my favorite character
Finally.
from all of this prequel stuff.
The main point I wanted to make is that while he is walking through the hallway to the safe house, like just taking out these Imperial, apparently like commando super troopers, he picks up that Imperial the ISB agent and uses them as a body shield. Judging how many shots he takes, that is entirely unnecessary and must have been done solely for effect. And what an effect that was.
Yeah.
I wondered about that part. It's like, why is he doing this?
Yeah,
It,
I enjoyed how it like you could even see like because he's a droid and can like react much quicker. Like he saw a shot coming and would move the body to block it, like fully.
yes.
Yes.
Like it was good. It was really good.
It might have even been just an intimidation thing. I mean, he was going to kill the guy at the other end of the hall anyway,
Yeah,
but
for effect. And I think it
yeah,
was effective.
yeah. But yeah, I love K2SO. He's was my favorite character in Rogue One, and it was good to finally see him, in the prequel to that. So yeah, still on point. Still loved pretty much every scene he was in.
Yeah.
I was on like, yeah, I was maybe on like 8 or 9, and I was like, this is the first Star Wars thing we reviewed that doesn't have like an adorable droid, and then he came in, and I was like, all right, well, covered, check. We just didn't have the like cute squishy animal of someplace that's in every episode as
Oh,
well, every
Yeah.
series.
It was Animal Light, the whole series, and then yeah, there wasn't the fun sidekick animal.
Mm.
Yeah,
feel like
There was
Cyril,
that
I
one.
there
guess,
was something on that farming planet, I feel like, but I
like
don't
a
remember
cow
what
or
it looks
something.
like. And so
Yeah.
that automatically like
Yeah.
eliminates.
Yeah,
There
there
was
was a
also
scene where
that. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, on the farming planet they had the kind of like the little uh what do they have like a big picnic kind of
Rape
like
scene?
scene.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry.
Whereas I was going to say, the scene after the Imperial informant that you were so attached to, Cody, after he got killed, there was that one of those weird like Studio Ghibli looking sort of cat things that went up and started sniffing him when he was
Oh,
lying dead on the
yeah.
bench. So that's like, the other closest thing I can think of to
yeah, you're right.
an
That was
adorable
That
animal.
I was so attached to. Listen to you, Resistance Fighter. My God.
uh,
so
war
one
is not kind, is all I'm saying.
yeah. I did also want to make sure to bring up the ending for Didra, who obviously did not have as successful a career as she was aiming to. And her last interaction with Krennic in that interrogation room, talking about speeches, the way he dressed her down was quite impressive.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I forgot about Krennic. He's probably, of the human characters, the one I enjoyed the most in the series, I think. It's something about the way Ben Mendelsohn talks. I mean,
Oh,
he's very clearly just Talos from the MCU, but I love it anyway. It's
that's a crossover that I would not mind. That's
Hmm.
headcanon for me now.
that, I mean, that could be a scroll. We don't know.
We don't know. Could be anyone.
Uh, But
I
yeah,
had read.
also,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, just one brief thing. The final scene with Dedra in that prison complex finally makes that whole thing. It ties back to season one with the 3 episode arc where he was in prison with the
Get
heated
ready
floors
to
and all
start assembling, Dedra.
Yeah.
that.
Uh, I had read somewhere that the finger on the top of Dedra's head was completely improvised. So like
Hmm,
that was her actual natural reaction, which is totally
nice.
appropriate because that's pretty fucking creepy.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a
And
good
then
sequence.
not a full-on arc, but we obviously have this kind of like end credit scene, which was I was really unexpected about with Bix having a child. She's back on the harvesting planet, and all of a sudden she has a child, which obviously is implied to be Andor's kid, and
I
kind
can
of
believe that.
it for a show that, as we were talking about, was like super super unhappy. This was a weirdly like hopeful note at the end of it, however short.
They like it was probably like say like 5, 6, 7 seconds where they like just stayed on her in that shot. And
Mhm.
I like as it went on, I kept thinking, oh, she's gonna die at the end of this.
Yes, with the tone of
Mm,
the show, you're
Yeah,
right.
it's like
yeah.
it's getting closer. Like there's something like a bomb's gonna drop and just
Right, just a
everything
TIE
wrong.
fighter flies by and
Yeah,
blasts her.
Yeah.
so glad it did not go that way.
Yeah. Instead, it's going to be 20 years later, 19 AY, Andor season 3 with his kid as the star.
Right.
Right. Was episode 12 the one that had like the ridiculously slow fade out? There
I
was
believe so.
because I made a
Yes.
note on episode 11 that it was like the weirdest, quickest cut, abrupt ending of like any show I'd seen in a long time. It was just like very much like I don't remember what happened at the very last scene, but it was like this happened and then they like cut to black and I was like, holy shit. And
Yeah.
then there was another one that was like the world's slowest PowerPoint effect. It was like 30-second dissolve effect or something.
Uh, spoken like a man who hasn't seen Battlefield Earth, where every scene transition
Oh,
is like is an actual like PowerPoint
Oh,
dissolve
I
or wipe.
blocked that out of my mind long ago.
uh,
actually, that brings up a topic, Cody, that I haven't even gone into. Now that we've kind of gone over the arcs in terms of like production value, like cinematography. The like, what was your impression of the overall series?
Overall, I felt it looked good. I appreciate the pretty consistent use of practical effects where it was an option. But on the flip side, that meant anytime there it was a CGI character, they kind of stood out to me. The Mon Calamari guy around the Resistance Roundtable, for lack
Hmm.
of a better term, yeah, he was very clearly not actually there. So when you do lean so heavily into practical effects, and I will never fault anything for doing that, it does really illustrate the times you do use CG, and for better or worse. But overall, I think the show looked good.
Yeah, I think it looked fine. It probably suffered slight. Well, I was gonna say if it suffered at all, it's not a production problem. It was just that so many of the scenes were like urban landscapes where it just looked very samey, other than the like wheat planet, and then the jungle place that they kept going back to. But for the most part, it was just cityscape, cityscape, cityscape. I didn't notice much. I never do in terms of CGI, but the only shot that really I noticed it, and I can't remember now if it was when Cassian was coming back for Clea. There was a scene where somebody was flying into like a city, and I was like, oh, that particular spot is like he's coming into land, like looks bad. But otherwise, it didn't really bother me too much during the show.
Yeah, I thought everything looked really good overall. I didn't uh possibly it was because I watched at least 6 or 7 episodes of this on my phone, so a small screen maybe like helped it out. But like I didn't notice a lot of problems with anything visually. Um, and I did enjoy it, just how it looked overall. It's obviously meant to be more of a down to earth, gritty, less flashy kind of show. But it kind of also what I was, what you said, Cody, and I was going to say it too, is like just the color palette was very small. There was
Yeah.
not many colors in this show. Lots of whites, grays, blacks, and a few browns, and that's pretty much it. So, um, probably intentional, but I do think it I don't know, it didn't really help the show. I don't think.
Yeah. Trying to think even season one, like the planet that Vel and Cinto were on had like a lot of greens to it, and like there were some other colors in there.
Yeah, the
Like yeah, with
Eldani.
the first planet in season one, I remember it had a lot of neon and stuff in the that cityscape.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah. I will. I was so impressed with the architecture of the buildings. I actually went up and looked, and almost every time you saw some weird architecture, it was an actual building. A lot of it they kind of CGI'd the top or portions of it. But for example, like outside the Senate, when Cassian is getting Mon Mothma out, that kind of like almost like whalebone-esque structure, the kind of like repeating white arches.
Yeah.
That's a real place in Italy.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
I
cool.
was very impressed
neat.
by how much they found. Again, with your point of practicality, they found practical locations. They CGI'd
Hmm.
around like the tops to get some other buildings out, but like a lot of it was
Huh.
real sets.
That's awesome.
It's interesting you say that. There was a scene, I can't remember what episode it was in. They were like coming out of a building going down staircases, and I was like, that's a pretty cool looking building. So I wonder if that,
That's that's the one. The outside
oh,
as they're
that's the
trying to
one you're
get
talking
away from
about.
the Senate. The stairs because they
Yeah.
Okay.
were like comically big. That one may have been added with CG, but the
Hmm.
rest of it, like it, I forget the name of it, but it's a place in Italy.
Huh.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, continuing on. I did want to make sure we give a second. We kind of covered the speeches,
Hmm.
but I did want to mention, especially with Mon Mothma's Senate speech, this was a change to what was Star Wars canon previously. So,
Oh.
in the cartoon show Rebels, Mon Mothma's a character, also played by the same actress. She gives a speech, a kind of like, I'm done with the Senate, here are the problems, and like, I'm now with the rebellion, kind of like implied.
Hmm.
But she does it like on a spaceship while she's fleeing along with some rebels. So the location of it and then some of the text was different. And I looked it up and they said, hey, we found that really restricting trying to like get in that exact tie-in, especially with where we had Mon Mothma and her kind of arc of I'm on Coruscant and now I'm throwing my entire life away and then I'm fleeing. So they that is something they actively changed.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I
All
did like
right.
that speech. The whole part about when truth dies, it, pretty much everything else follows with it. Yeah, again, it it's different in current year.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, just very well written, very well done, very meaningful. So
Was it her speech that the I'm sorry, I'm trying to look up the guy's name. Who was the like older dude with the
The Imperial
Empire?
security.
Yeah.
So it's not her speech. It's
Okay.
and I have that as a note, really quick.
oh,
It's Nemec's. So the guy on the train heist or the payroll heist.
mhm.
He was a little kind of like mousy type guy who had like the data slate, and he wrote that manifesto, and
Hmm.
that's what the Imperial officer is listening to at the very end. So
Oh,
Cody,
okay.
excellent call.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Why was that guy killed? Did I miss that part? Was it just because of the ineptitude below him on the command chain?
Yeah, he took
Hmm.
his own life because he understood how big he failed
Okay.
in
Hmm.
letting Mon Mothma have that speech, and like that's because for the Imperials wanting to have so much control, having someone high up in that position be able to like openly rebel is something that was seen as a failure. Like he should have had the intelligence to know that she was an agent or like she was turning, and he should have been able to respond to prevent that. So he
Okay.
knew how big he messed up, and that was a theme they kind of did subtly, but I think it really ties in well with the Star Wars. The whole like the Empire leadership is consuming itself. Like how many times did Vader take out the next highest command person, or like this person's like, oh, I failed, so now I'm dead,
Hmm.
and that's something that you see in high authoritarian fascist regimes too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple less things in the agenda here. I wanted to make sure, as I typically do, talk a little bit about the music. Because one of the things that was really, really subtle in here, but as the season progressed, they actually brought in more and more of the Rogue One style music. So that
Mhm.
at the ending, it kind of like dovetailed into, okay, now we're getting to the Rogue One orchestral soundtrack.
Hmm.
Yeah, for a lot of this, the music did seem very understated,
Yeah.
which is fine. I did have to kind of go back when I started my binge rewatch. I was paying close attention to make sure there actually was music because I remember, or I wasn't quite sure because of how subtle, like you said, it can be. Um, but once I took note of it, it did feel like it fit the scenes it was in, and yeah, it definitely changed character as towards the end. So
Yeah. Which I'll throw a note. Season one, the intro music, it was basically each kind of like different instrument kind of solo in each episode, and then it slowly builded, and the instruments came together until you got the
hmm.
final soundtrack on the intro music. So that's another example. Exactly what you're saying, like it's subtle, it's small, and unless you kind of like go back and see, like you don't see how
Yeah,
it's all starting to come together.
neat.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like when the music was prominent, I enjoyed it. Like it was often very like moving and like um just had a really good quality that I feel fit the tone of the show very well.
Mhm.
There's a lot of bits that were like kind of just dramatic and had a lot of the kind of feeling behind them. So it played well, I think is where they used it.
Mhm.
Needed more funeral bells.
They used them all up in season one.
I know. That's why
But
it's the greatest television of all time.
I can't leave this section though without specifically talking about the DJ at the wedding. That bot was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, that certainly brought the it brought the party.
Yes. So
Mon
that
Mothma sure thought so.
if you want to look it up on Spotify, that's Namos with an exclamation point at the end.
Okay,
Oh,
So you can
Nemos.
you can rock the hell out to that.
oh, I
Nice.
just stumbled across your 1 hour of dancing Mon Mothma YouTube clip.
See? It's there.
Nice.
I know what I'm doing before bed.
All right. So, really quickly, I wanted to go through. I thought this was really interesting. Tony Gilroy, so the writer director, talked about a number of the inspirations he had for Andor, because famously he wasn't really a big Star Wars guy. He said,
Hmm.
"Okay, I'll do this, but I want to do my own story." And obviously, one of the stories he wanted to tell was that of one of rebellion and revolutions. And he actually, in a couple of interviews, kind of mentioned specifically the Russian, Haitian, American, and French revolutions, and obviously the French Revolution in Gorman. But he took like notes and events and themes from those real world revolutions and brought them into this because he really wanted to tell the story of rebellion. So there's a lot of like, subtle stuff that you can start to notice. Especially for I'll point out obviously the French resistance in the Gorman, but there's an event called the Wannsee Conference where the German officials all met together to discuss about the final solution and carrying out these things. And it's a big parallel to that imperial officers they're meeting to talk about what they're going to do in Gorman and kind of like both like, okay, we have to get over the morality. We need this material and we're going to sacrifice this planet to do it. Everyone get on board. But then also, how are we going to sell this to everyone so that everyone doesn't get the impression that we're just like, sacrificing an entire world to our war engine? So stuff like that is interlaced without. It's pretty fantastic to see that. And I also wanted to quickly mention some of that stuff was really, really familiar to me. And I started looking up because there's a podcast I highly recommend by Mike Duncan called the Revolutions Podcast. It is literally nothing but he goes, okay, I'm going to do this series on the Haitian Revolution. And then it's like 30 episodes about like, here are the major players and here's the major events and this is what led to
Whoa.
that and stuff. So like, if you ever want to just passively understand like why the Dominican Republic is in the state that it's in, Revolutions Podcast by Mike Duncan, I highly recommend.
Hmm.
Huh.
All right. And to kind of wrap this up and kind of where the series wraps up, looking back at Rogue One and thinking about like now that we've got so much background, is there anything you can kind of think of from Rogue One? And I didn't get to finish a full rewatch. Hopefully some others did, but any kind of big tie-ins or things that you're like, I didn't understand this from Rogue One before, but now I do because I've seen the series.
I haven't seen Rogue One in a hot minute. I do feel like I have a better feel for who Cassian is as a person. I mean, that's obviously the big major thing. Um, Beyond that, I would really have to sit down and watch it again to provide more solid input on that. Unfortunately,
Think I would have to say about the same thing. I know I enjoyed watching Rogue One, but I don't remember a lot of details to it. So, to try and tie that in, would be pretty tough for me right now. I do think I want to go back and watch it again, soon, so I can see how it fits together because I feel like it does.
Yeah, I can definitely say that what little I watch definitely ties in. And I know one of the big things related to Cassian, because I distinctly remember watching Rogue One, because one of the first things Cassian does is like shoot this informant. who can't like climb up the stairs or climb up the wall to get away from the stormtroopers coming. And
Hmm.
I remember being like, Jesus, like that's a lot. But like now you kind of go like, oh no, he has that like that training and he's got that like Luthen mentality of like, no, that's all for the rebellion.
Mhm.
The other thing
Yeah.
is I so remember a line from Cassian in Rogue One, which is like, I've had to do a lot of things for the rebellion. And that kind of like subtle like I've had to do a lot of bad things I'm ashamed of. Or like, so that when they announced the series, I was like, that's the line that probably sold this series is like we're gonna start to fill in like what the hell did he have to do? What dark corners did
Mm.
he go to? And now we know a lot of them.
I haven't seen it in a while either, so I'd have to
Yeah.
go back and watch it again. Although it is the best Star Wars movie, but still, I'm scared to watch it now after watching 2 seasons of this, to be quite frank. I may never watch it again just in case.
It's got a lot more K2SO.
Yeah. I will say that what Cody just said touches on what were some of my biggest reservations before heading into the series because um, I mentioned it like in our chat that it is, or it might have been at the end of another podcast episode. I don't quite remember, but basically what we have with now 2 seasons of Andor is a show that's a prequel to a prequel that has a longer runtime than the 10 movies it leads up to. So conceptually, that was a hard sell for me for a while. Um,
And don't
but
forget they wanted to do 5 seasons. That was the original plan.
he did.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Just wait till they fill in those 1 year gaps, Justin.
uh, hey, you wanted more Saw. God, what was his name?
Saw Gerrera,
Saw
yeah.
Gerrera. Yeah. So I mean, this might be your chance.
Right. And then they're definitely going to put in the fuzzy animal sidekick character. So
Yeah, they have to.
So because I don't remember where exactly Rogue One starts off, so there's no third season of this. This is meant to go right into Rogue One.
they made so Cassian Andor has on the same outfit. He is going to the planet where the very first scene, the rings of Kefkar. So everything implies that like it is the ending of season 2 is like moments before Rogue One kicks off.
Okay.
Gotcha. Until season 3 with this kid.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Black Panther Jr.
2.5.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask the group because my criticisms of season 1, one of the main ones was if you thought they had the right amount of episodes. What did you guys think of this here for season 2? Was 12 the right call?
I was going to save this rant for when we got to our actual ratings, but since you asked,
Ooh,
I uh, I did not like season 1 at all because it felt like they could have trimmed 25 to like 33% of the episodes and not really lost any of the story. Um, because there was just so much that stayed focused on the same thing but spread out over like 2, sometimes 3 episodes without seemingly adding a whole lot to the proceedings. um, Cody mentioned, and I always keep coming back to the prison arc. Did we really need all of that time watching him assembling Death Star parts? And my answer is no. They could have compressed that. They could have done what was like an entire episode as like a 2-minute montage at most. I don't think anything would have been lost. I I honestly feel like for season 1 at least, 12 episodes was far too many. Season 2, on the other hand, minus that first arc, which if I ever go back and rewatch this, I will not watch those first 3 episodes because so little actually happened. Um, Besides that, I feel season 2 was much better paced. Like a lot of the episodes felt like they were iterative. They actually had important plot elements that worked their way in that built upon what came before that were meaningful instead of just being a drawn out extension of something that had happened the previous episode. Um, so yeah, I honestly think this is ignoring the first 3 episodes of season 2. This is a much better paced season.
I'm in agreement with the first arc, those first 3 episodes. Definitely could have trimmed some stuff, sped it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say the crazy band of rebels that it could have been a scene, quite honestly, instead of a multi episode element. Um,
Hmm.
so I'm sure that they would go into like, well, we really want to let things breathe and give a lot of subtlety, and we want to. The show obviously appreciates like quiet time in the episode.
Yeah.
They don't always need to have something happening, which in some cases works really well, and I think in some cases in the show works well, and other times not. So it's not completely even in terms of how well they use the space and the time they have, and that's why I think we could compress it some.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would be
All right, the go ahead.
kind of closer to what Justin said. Definitely season one, two at like two minimum. I think episodes had to come out of that because it was too much of the same with just glacial plot movement. I know Joe was like, but they're building like the resistance to do the uprising in the jail, and I'm like, I didn't need 3 episodes of that to get that moment though. Like, and I harp on that. But anyway, this season I thought was better paced. I probably would condense the beginning part, as both of you said, considerably, possibly enter in on Gorman first, but it does make me wonder, like, do you think that was Disney saying, all right, we're going to drop this in 4 chunks and they need to be equal time, so you got to have 3 episodes for each one? And I know we've talked about, like, why does that matter in a streaming age? But
Yeah.
you probably could take maybe 1.5, 2 episodes out of this as well. I don't know, or put them, like I said, in Gorman right away and just ignore all that crap on the planet. Like, ugh,
Yeah. Yeah. Like, did the TIE fighter even show up again or be relevant at all?
they were
In
hiding,
the
Justin.
the
Don't you
wider
get it?
lore,
They were hiding, unlike the rest of the show.
Uh,
in the wider lore, yes, but obviously not in the show. So
okay. Okay.
Uh, yeah, better pacing, but maybe could still tweak just a bit. All right, I'm
And
just curious.
Brett, any thoughts?
Um, it nothing that you haven't said already. I think it was uh again those first 3 episodes drug on, but after that I felt like they were good. They like a lot of them. I didn't look at the exact times, but I think a lot of them were like 40 to 50 minutes, somewhere in that range, and it felt right. Like it felt like they came to conclusion points, at the end of the episode, and things felt like they were paced well and ended at when they should. So yeah, it's probably a bit of just learning from season one to season two. But overall it felt a lot better.
That's a good point too, because there were a lot of episodes that were like 47, 48 minutes, and I'd be like 42 minutes in, and then the credits would roll, and I'd be like, whoa, okay, 6 minutes to credits on this? But like they actually weren't that long of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's not like they were like, we got to make this 59:59 on the clock, so which I appreciate. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have some questions about that release schedule. Like Cody, like you just mentioned, like I really hope they didn't plan these out to match that release schedule. I would hope that Disney would give them freedom to just like, look, do the episode you need to do, and we'll figure out the release thing. But these pockets of like 3 episode releases, there's been some series where like, oh, we're releasing the first 2 or 3 episodes as a one-time thing because of the
Hmm.
first couple episodes maybe like a little bit longer and kind of take a while to accumulate. That I can see. But since we've seen such a range of like, this shows like 1 episode a week, or like this shows, hey, we're gonna blast off with 3 and then it's 1 a week, or like now we're in this 3 a week. So, like I don't understand the strategy of it.
that's a good point because coming out here like right now is Ironheart, and aren't they dropping like 2 weeks of 3 episodes?
Yeah.
And that's the whole
Hmm.
show. Like it's 2 weeks.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
Mm-hmm.
And like Echo will point out like that, and I think the entire series dropped in one day.
Yes, I think
I think
so.
so.
So there's just been such a range. I don't understand why the ranges, unless if there's an artistic reason. Like I said, the first couple episodes are like really tied together and kind of need to be consumed. But then I'd also make the argument, well, why don't you just make it one episode then?
Yeah. I don't know. They might be just trying to flail around and see what works. What's the
Yeah,
best approach?
testing it out.
Maybe. So,
Yeah,
Also
because
odd, and I guess they have to, but also odd because as I watched through this, each episode had like a pretty extensive recap at the beginning of like
Yeah,
3 minutes of like, here's what happened in the last 4 episodes in case you're behind. I'm like, well, these all dropped on the same night, technically.
that's
So,
a damn good point.
but I guess they're counting on people to not watch them all. I don't know. It's weird. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, the only explanation I can make is it kind of ties with the time jumps, but that's
Yeah.
again, it doesn't feel like a great reason.
Yeah. Yeah. We got what we got.
All
You
right.
know,
But before we go on the ratings, though, I do want to bring up a topic because we've been referencing it. I'm going to jump all the way back to season one and ask the prison scenes. It sounds like you all had a big problem with it. Like the prison was a concentration camp, right? We're all aware of that.
Yeah, doesn't mean we needed, so much time watching them just assemble the same parts over and over again and make them do the same routine over and over again. And yeah, it just really felt like, I don't want to say torture, but I would be hard. You would have to
Why
pretty
wouldn't
much
you
pay
say
me to
it?
watch
Because
that arc again. Because it was
that's what it
just,
was. It was torture. It was Star Wars list.
man,
It
season
was
one of Andor had more time in your concentration camp prison than Schindler's List had at a 5 hour runtime. And I'm not joking about that.
so think how good Schindler's List would have been at 3 hours.
Well, no, but
uh, I don't know. I just, yeah, I I mentioned I fell asleep once or twice during during season two, but I think that's just because it was really late when I was trying to like binge this. I lost track of how many times I fell asleep in season one, and I think most of them were during that section because nothing fucking happened. It's
who's
just,
helping the old man, Justin? Come on. Haven't you watched Squid Games?
I watched the
What
first
you
season
do?
until he turns out to be evil.
Spoilers.
Evil's a
Maybe.
matter of perspective, Justin.
Now who's wearing the red hat?
Exactly. Just trying to provide
uh,
hope for the people that didn't have any. What's your problem?
uh,
I
but
love the
yeah,
journey
I
Cody's been on in this in terms of like no hope, and now he's trying to supply hope. This
right.
is great.
That's right.
Character development. There we go.
There it is.
Uh,
Put
uh,
me in a put me in a cell and make me cry.
All right. Well, we've kind of come to the end here where we give our ratings, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but I'm gonna ahead let you guys go first.
It sucked. Just kidding.
do you want to go first, Cody?
I can go first. That's fine.
Okay.
Um, it was. I don't have my number here. I tried to look, but I don't apparently have notes back from season one of this particular show. But it was better than season one, I think. Maybe. Question mark. Although I didn't get to see what's his face. Oh crap. Gollum. Help me out. Andy Serkis. I didn't get to
Andy
see Andy
Oh,
Serkis.
Andy
Serkis say
Serkis.
that he couldn't swim in this season, which is, that was the highlight of the last season. So casualties for the resistance, I guess. No, for me, this was better, but still had some pacing issues, particularly the brutal beginning of this. And it maybe sounds like I had more issues with the year jump between the arcs than other people did, but just like how a character, like I mentioned, went from like Saw's army to like suddenly back with resistance fighters. I'm like, I don't know how he got there. Is Saw with them? Did he let him go? Did he escape? Was that like he did his time and he left? I don't even know what Saw was doing in this episode or this season, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, characters for me are what drive a story a lot of times, and I just again don't see anybody here that I am that enthralled by, good, bad, or otherwise. Like I am not that interested in these characters, sadly. Um, Particularly, I don't know, I guess both the villains and the quote unquote heroes, but Dedra's just a drag, man. Cyril at least had some moments towards the end, but traditionally has been kind of a wonker too. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess it was better, maybe? Question marks. This is gonna come in for me at what I'm gonna put at high praise with an almost passing score of 5.75 for this season for Andor season 2. The best thing I can say about it is it's the end of the story. So there's that.
Praise. I like the 0.75. It's in
That's
super
right.
specific, significant digits.
Indeed. I guess I can go next. I mentioned I really didn't enjoy season one much at all. It was bloated. It felt like it didn't establish enough to justify its 12 episode runtime. Uh, and heading into this, I really kind of didn't want to do a review for season two because I was thinking it was going to just be more of the same. But I missed out on being part of the season one review. I think I was out of town or something. So I figured I should at least see where this goes. And plus I promised Joe that I would give it a fair shake. So I'm a man of my word. I sat down, I gave it a fair shake. And as many of us have said, the first three episodes were really not good, and that had me really geared up for, oh no, this is just going to be a complete shit show. I don't understand why people like this, why it's so popular, why people are saying it's so good. But I stuck with it because I said I would, and I'm glad I did, because once you get over that initial hurdle, and it's a pretty major one, it's a quarter of the show, and that's going to reflect in my score. Things actually get good. Like there's intrigue, there's resonance with current events, there's a lot of subtext and just undercurrents in the story and a development of characters that I didn't think I would have cared about. Cyril, but also
Female Dedra?
No, not Dedra.
Oh,
Luthen's assistant, Kylie, Clea.
Clea.
There we go. I was thinking Kylie, and I knew that wasn't right. Yeah, seeing her backstory and the lead up to what she ends up having to do to someone who has been like the pivotal point in her life up until that. There was a lot of gravity in a lot of this, and by the end, I really, really enjoyed most of what was there. But like I said, that first 25% was painful, and which I have to say in my score, 25% of it was trash. The rest was great. 7.5.
All right, Brett.
All right. Honestly, my thoughts echo a lot of that. So to keep it somewhat brief here, those first few episodes it left me feeling like I don't know where these characters are going. I don't quite understand the storyline right now. And like I felt like I was supposed to be knowing these, and I didn't. So I was like, is it just me, or is like I need to watch that first season again to like understand this? But I would say from the episode of the Gorman Rebellion through to the end of the season, I was definitely very interested in watching. I was, kind of locked into it at that point. And I think it definitely does, as Justin, you've said a couple of times, just the fact that this came out in the time that we're living in right now, where it feels like it mirrors a lot of what we're seeing. I think that gave it a lot of weight for me. Like I was definitely rooting for these characters, even if I do partially agree with like Cody saying like these characters didn't necessarily give us a lot to latch onto to like them as characters necessarily, other than the fact that we know that they are the good guys and, ultimately are going to lead us into what we know is coming down the line of all the other Star Wars, the movies and things. So I enjoyed the ride from that turning point. I'm just so I don't have the same numbers, Justin, I'm going to go 7.75 overall.
Could have went down also, just for the record. You didn't have to go up.
Brett never
That
goes down.
What I've heard.
to be unique. Nice job. All right. Well, to round it out, when I watched Rogue One, I remember going, I want to see Star Wars without plot armor for the characters, and they gave that extremely. And then while watching Rogue One, there was that line of Cassian's like, "We've all had to do things we are not proud of for the rebellion." I said, I want to know what that is. I was expecting a book, I was expecting a comic, some other kind of extended universe type stuff, and instead they gave this whole show. And I for the show, I wanted to see like what are the dark things, what are the bodies that had to be laid down so that Luke could walk the sky and like achieve the things he wanted to do, and that the show gave that to me. So like there was I think the cinematography, the tone was great. I love being in a universe where like I got Andor right next to literally the series that came out right before it is Skeleton Crew, which tonally is so different.
Mm.
And like we've got that variety. It's like going into an ice cream store that actually has different flavors you can choose from. So I really appreciate that. So, like all those things leading up, I've got a really positive take on this series. It fulfilled a lot of things I wanted to see. And I think it adds a great amount to the lore. It's not something like 9-year-old Dan watching Star Wars would have enjoyed or appreciated, but is definitely something 40-year-old Dan can appreciate. But before I give my rating, I've got to ask Cody. Cody, have you ever wanted someone to give a rating that counteracts yours? Because you're going to get it. So I'm giving this a 9.1.
Ooh.
There's
Wow.
definitely some like we mentioned some pacing issues. A lot of the stuff in the beginning, the Yavin crazy rebels, like really didn't seem like it fit well. But this hit a lot of the things I wanted to see. It's not something I'm going to sit down and watch over the holidays, but I'm really glad it's there. And like you're saying, it especially the fact that it seems to be resonating so much with like real world events, it's hitting extra hard. So 9.1.
Nice. Oh man.
And of course, you're not going to watch it over the holidays. You have to reserve that for the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, deep cuts. But no, I'd much rather listen to that torture device and watch that again.
Like we'll still be here by the holidays. Come on, you guys.
uh,
Please. All right, we got 7.525 today. Pretty good. You want to hear a funny story? Apparently, I rated season one higher. I went back and found it and was like, oh shit. Somebody gave it a 6.75, and that was the low score, so that must have been me, I'm assuming. So, whoopsie. On that, whoopsie.
All right.
Uh,
Any final thoughts?
yeah, I was just gonna plug two things here, at least on my end. Number one, Dan, if you didn't see, you have been officially added to the FonPod website. So you
Woo.
are on there with the profile that I just made up. If you want to change any details, let me know on that. Along with the wonderful picture of you with some stormtroopers, I believe that's now online. So there's that as well.
Excellent.
And then also for our listeners, just wanted to plug that we will be commencing with an 80s music summer spectacular here starting next week, sounds like, where we're going to be counting down the top 100 80s songs. So should be lots of fun arguments on that as well.
Excellent. Well, that sounds like the end of this episode. Thank you all very much, and may the force be with you.
Also with you.
I don't know why I'm waving because it's an audio podcast. Bye, guys.
See you later.
Bye.